Alright, hello and welcome back to the Bessemer and Lake Erie in HO scale. I'm Ray Brown, and going to do something a little bit different today. I've had a few people ask me to place, or I should say put together some track plans so people could understand kind of how the layout flows. And I thought I'd do that, and also kind of compare it against the real railroad map. I was looking through who watches these videos, and only like 38% of people are in the United States, which makes me wonder, how many people don't even really know the Bessemer as a railroad. I always feel it's a little bit obscure unless you live in this part of the country. So the one thing I did get done on the layout here in the last few days is I finally got this passing track done around the roundhouse. So kind of in the engine terminal here, I'm intending this track to be my caboose track, and so that just makes this a passing track to hold trains on the old main, and did get it connected up there. Alright, so let's jump into it. So first thing, this book was really the highly inspirational book of me wanting to build this layout. It just sort of walked through the railroad town by town, and I just really kind of just fell in love with this. So really where all this came from. So thought I'd start here. So why the Bessemer? I could have modeled any railroad any time, and yes, I grew up with it, but just, some fun facts here. It had the first all-steel freight car, 1896. More tonnage per mile than any other Class 1 per mile of track. So think of that as like per capita. They used some ridiculously heavy rail. They were the first Class 1 to convert from steam to diesel. They were done in 1953, so they beat out the Southern just by a little bit. I think the Southern gets the credit because, again, Bessemer is a little obscure. Great safety records, and integral to the steel industry. So a little bit about how the Bessemer works is this was all part of Carnegie Steel. So you would mine the iron ore out of the mines in Minnesota. Carnegie also owned the Duluth-Mesabian Iron Range, so that railroad would take everything to the boats at Lake Superior. They'd put it on the boats, which Carnegie also owned, and bring them down to Conneaut, Ohio, and run down the Bessemer to the mills in Pittsburgh. And that's kind of a little bit of a sticking point for me. The Bessemer didn't actually go to the mills in Pittsburgh. It went as far as North Bessemer, which is Penn Hills, is a suburb of Pittsburgh, and the Union Railroad actually ran to the mills. So one of the slogans, I guess you would say, is a lot of the old literature and signs, whatever, would say the Bessemer route, and that's really what I'm concentrating on. I'm concentrating on the route. The layout's not all about the docks. It's not all about the steel mills. It's about the route. So let's talk about the route. So we're basically in western Pennsylvania here. So we got Ohio over here and Pennsylvania over here, and of course Lake Erie. So coming down from the lake in Conneaut, Ohio, the railroad ran as far as Cranesville, and there was also a branch that went into my hometown, Girard, and they had trackage rights over the nickel plate into Erie. So Cranesville was considered the north end of the main line, and there was the Conneaut branch and the Erie branch. So today, CN running things. There's about one train a day to Conneaut, one in each direction, and we get about a train a month or so into Girard, and that's about one car usually. But even as recently as the 90s, the Girard branch was pretty busy. So running mainline south, you go from Cranesville and just kind of work your way through farmland to western Pennsylvania, and a lot of this is Amish country. And you get down towards Meadville, and there was a branch to Meadville, and the Bessemer actually owned Conneaut Lake Park, which was an amusement park. It's still there. The railroad owned it up till the 30s, and I think trains actually ran right into the park till the 50s or 60s. That branch is gone. It's all abandoned. In fact, it's a rail trail, bike trail now out of Meadville. Continuing south, the line splits at a point called KO. And at KO, one track kind of goes out down into the valley, if you want to think of it that way, into the town of Greenville, and that's where all the locomotive shops were. And then reconvened at Cremis, KY. And then basically the little straight line right there is, early on in the days of the railroad, they built themselves a shortcut that they wouldn't have to go down in the valley into Greenville. So track kind of splits in two directions there, but then reconvenes. Moving south of Greenville, come down through the towns of Grove City. And when we get down towards Butler, there was a place called Branchton. In Branchton, we had the Hilliards branch, a little branch that went off to serve some coal mines out to the town of Hilliards. That branch is gone. I will not be modeling the Hilliards branch or the Meadville branch, but I will have turnouts and switches like there were tracks going there. I'll represent it. Coming south of Butler, we have Queen Junction. And Queen Junction was the point that we had they called the Western Allegheny. So that was a branch that went out, served a lot of coal mines, and I think a limestone quarry. And when I'm modeling in 1952, this was actually owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad. It was a kind of a landlocked, orphaned branch of the Pennsylvania Railroad, and they would bring coal down to Queen Junction, and the Bessemer would pick it up. And then I think in either 62 or 67, the Bessemer acquired the Western Allegheny, and this was the last stand of the F units. So I am going to model the Western Allegheny, and there was a point when I started building this layout that I thought you could build a whole layout just out of the Western Allegheny, and it would be really cool. But I think I like what I did. So coming south, we're going to go through Butler. At Butler, there was the big Pullman Standard factory and AK Steel, which what was it called, Armco back then, I guess. And across the Allegheny River and into North Bessemer, where there's a massive yard where they'd drop off iron ore for the Union Railroad, and interchange with a few railroads along the way. The B&O, the Pennsylvania, being the major players. So that's kind of grounding the railroad in real life, and basically the whole point of the railroad really is to service the iron ore and steel industry. So one of the things that makes the Bessemer interesting then is they ran very few empty miles. They'd bring iron ore south and then reload the hoppers with coal and take coal back north and put coal back on the boats. So not a lot of empty miles, and very heavy in coal and iron ore. But in 52, some merchandise trains and passenger trains definitely were out there, just not the mainstay of the business by any means. Alright, so let's talk about the layout then. So here is my super crude sketches of here we are in the basement. So here's the door coming down the stairs and my swing bridge. And on level 1, let's just start here in Conneaut. So Conneaut's up against the wall, and Conneaut and North Bessemer are the same yard. It's the magical transition between the two. So kind of coming through Conneaut, you've seen my harbor scene coming up along Conneaut Creek and into Cranesville Yard. And Cranesville, the yard was kind of split into the A yard and the B yard. So I'm going to have my B yard, and come around the corner I'll have my A yard. And the A yard is going to be very, very small. Might just have like a sanding tower and a watering tower and a few tracks to hold some cars. And then into Albion. And in Albion is my version of CE. Now, in real life, CE should have been more like over here. But when you're trying to plan a model railroad, sometimes things just don't work quite the way you want them to. So CE will be my split off to the Girard branch. The Girard branch will come out around the end of the peninsula here and then go into a helix kind of between these decks, going down. We'll come back to the Girard branch later. So Albion, Conneautville, and at Conneautville, here's kind of where I'm saying I want to have the tracks kind of coming off, like the Meadville branch would be going off this way, but it's not modeled. Hartstown Swamp, Hartstown, KO, and at KO, the KO line splits off, and we'll start climbing a hill, running right around the back of the backdrop, coming across Osgood Viaduct in the back, and going into the helix, joining the helix on its second turn, where the main line comes out around the roundhouse, through the town of Greenville, across Bridge 38, Shenango Yard, through XN where we cross the Erie, and into the helix. So we'll go up the helix and then come to level 2. So coming out of the helix, we'll be going this way. This will be KY, where the KO line and the original main rejoin. And we'll come across and we're going to model the Porter Cutoff in US 62 on the upper deck. So that'll just be a long fill ridge. This was a bypass the railroad built at one point, and I think I read somewhere it took something like 70,000 hopper cars to fill in the Porter Cutoff, and it's mostly slag from the steel mill, so kind of a neat thing that just be modeled. And another thing that's not quite perfect, I'll be modeling the Porter Cutoff as double track, and the Porter Cutoff never was double tracked. They built it as a single track, and the second track ran on the original main under it. So a little bit of modeler's license there. The short wall here will be my Grove City scene, and I want to have a few industries in there, but Montgomery Lumber is an industry that's there today that I want to model. Coming around the corner will be Branchton, and that'll be, so my Hilliard's branch will just be kind of going off into nothing, but be a couple tracks there to change out cars, like between operating sessions, like stuff was brought down from the Hilliard's branch to be picked up on the main. And then not much going on across the upper deck here, just some country running out through farm fields and in cow country, which is what the Bessemers really like for the most part, but I don't want to do too much switching since this is all above the big yards. Coming around the corner, I'll have Queen Junction, so a couple interchange tracks here, and the Western Allegheny will split off here and basically run tight along the walls, and we'll come back to the Western Allegheny here too. So tracks here will be just more out running through farm country, not much going on. The Western Allegheny will be in the background, so, you know, I'll keep things kind of minimal here. And as we come along, we'll get into Standard Junction. I'll do Calvin Yard down this wall, doing a representation for Butler. As we come around the corner, we'll do the big Pullman Standard, you know, tracks kind of going into the doors, and I'll do Armco Steel down here on one end. And I think that'll be a lot of operating here too, just somebody working between Butler and Pullman Standard and Armco. So you come through Butler, back into the helix, and when you come in the helix, you'll actually come out around this way and wrap back into the helix and go down. So back down to deck 1. Come out of deck 1, we'll go through the Allegheny Industrial District, cross the String Bridge, cross the Allegheny River, and into XB in North Bessemer. So this is where you could just turn the train around, go the other way, or run continuous loop. Alright, so that's the main decks. So let's go back and talk about Girard. So let's see. So we said we were here. So at CE, we split off. We came out around the end of the peninsula and we helixed down. So now we're down on this, what I call the subdeck. We'll come out of the helix and we'll have Platea. We'll cross Elk Creek, and I have a curved wooden bridge that we're going to use for the bridge at Elk Creek. I know it's not prototypical, but tough. I like that bridge. We'll come around the corner, and Girard will be back here, and we'll have a siding for Mark's Toys, and probably a couple other things, maybe EMSCO. A couple little switching opportunities at Girard. There's a little coal dock I want to put in there for like home heating coal. We'll come around the corner, and this will be Wallace Junction, where we join the NKP. And this will be interchange, which a lot of the trains will originate and terminate here at Wallace. The NKP will just kind of keep venturing off in the distance, and we'll split off, go around, the Erie Forge. And I want to do a whole 12th Street scene here with the Erie Station. I want to make sure I have the tracks that cross the street and go into Bucyrus. And then kind of everything down here towards the end is all staging. And if you see how I did the supports holding up the main deck, it kind of makes sense how this works. So, and that's the lower deck and the Erie branch. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, actually. I designed all this to be able to sit in a chair, and it's at a nice level where you're sitting in a chair and roll around and work the lower deck. Then the only other thing to talk about is it's not really another deck. It's just for clarity, the Western Allegheny. So we'll split off here at Queen Junction, and we're just going to hug the walls. I'm going to climb, get about maybe 4 inches, 6 inches above the other track work. And this is going to be like 18-inch curves. And I might do Code 70 rail. Again, 18-inch curves. We'll do a limestone quarry in here somewhere. Branch off, have a coal mine up here. And then I'll figure I'll punch through the wall, and on top of the helix, I thought I'd make a neat coal mine scene and everything else. That'll be the end of the Western Allegheny, maybe with some engine sheds, like there was at Keister. So the Western Allegheny should be a pretty fun thing to run. I have a Penske H10 280 already. I might pick up like an RS2 or something, but I'm sure I'll run some of my Bessemer power up there too, because, well, it's my railroad and I can do what I want. So anyway, that's the track plan in a nutshell. Only other thing I guess I got going on is I'm working on this building for the Erie Depot. Out of pictures I found and everything else, this kit looked pretty close. So getting that together, and that's about it for this week. I've just been cleaning up a lot of details. I got a lot of ground throws in. All the switches I had on the layout. I think everything has a ground throw on it now, and I opted to do ground throws. Mainly because for the aerial modeling and everything else, I wanted a very manual feel to everything. All my layouts in the past have all been tortoise machines. I like tortoise machines; they're great. But I didn't want this to feel overly automated. I wanted to kind of have the feel of the 50s. So that's where I went. And anyway, I hope this was useful, helpful, entertaining. Hopefully not too boring, but that is the layout in a nutshell, and I will see you guys later.